Hello, 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 coaches and leaders. I am so excited to have Bethany Rees on with me. We are going to talk about like an interesting way of looking at leadership today. We're going to talk about kind of leadership as kind of a body of leadership, and we're going to look at like kind of our own physical body and what that has to do with leadership. So before we jump into the content, Bethany, I want to welcome you to the show. I'm so excited that you're here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Becca. I'm beyond excited to talk, and I love your platform, the whole concept of the whole educator, because we need to be talking about all of it, all the
All of
things.
it. And I know you and I very much align with our
Mhm.
thoughts and philosophy around leadership and honoring the whole human around that. So before we dive in, I'd love you just to share with everyone, what do you do in the world of leadership?
Awesome. Well, my background is education. I was in it for almost 20 years, take away a few maternity leaves. But I started as just a classroom teacher at a high school, and then I got my master's in gifted and talented and went immediately K2. And I'm like, oh my gosh, little kids. So I have literally taught every single grade level K-12. I can honestly say that. And then I became an instructional technologist, an instructional coach, and then I was a high school administrator opening a brand new, beautiful three-story building in Texas in one of the largest school districts. And that's something you never want to do twice in your life. It was a beautiful thing, but it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. So I have now moved from Texas back to Arkansas. And in that transition, I have stepped away from education and into the leadership realm. I feel like I just have so much experience of what not to do as well as what to do
Yes.
with leadership. And so that's what I do now. I'm Leadership on the Rocks. That's my website. That's my podcast that I host. And then my newly published book, Leadership on the Rocks, is out and available on Amazon. So I am all about helping encourage leaders of how to get through the wilderness of leadership, how to survive it, how to adapt, and then how to succeed in it.
Love it. I'm so excited to talk about it. And the things we're going to be talking about are in your book, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So if folks want to know more after this episode, they can go grab the book and read more about it. So I want to jump in here. You have a really interesting, thought leadership around le- kind of leadership in the body. Can you say it
Mhm.
in your way? I know I'm not saying it correctly. And I want you
I
to share like
can.
what is this thought about?
Well, let me give you a little bit of background. So I got a skip level promotion. I went from instructional coach to an associate principal. So I skipped being an assistant principal. And you go from serving people, but really you're getting a lot of positive feedback for the most part in your service to administration, which is, let me just be real here, a lot of negativity, like
Hmm.
a lot of negativity. And so I felt like I had the experience of the mountaintop of promotion of I really get to make big changes in education. I get to, have a little bit of authority behind my name in those decisions to really support teachers. I'm a huge teacher advocate to really make the best environment for our students and what they need, the whole child. Um, and so I was so excited for that. But as soon as I stepped into that position from the mountaintop of promotion, there was the absolute avalanche of reality. It was a landslide of problems, conflicts, and constraints faster than I could manage. And then I ended up in this valley of despair of, is this what leadership really is like? I can't do it. It's too much. And so in that valley is where I really kind of discovered leadership is not a destination to be reached. It's a body that you have to nourish and you even have to protect. And so, the body of leadership, everything that you do, and this is not just for education, it's not for just industry, business, it's for your home life too. The body of leadership is your head, it's your mindset. How are you taking in and processing? That's like your GPS system. How am I navigating everything internally? Because the biggest battle you face is in your head. And so that's the head of leadership, the mindset. Then you have the heart of leadership, and that's your relationships. How am I connecting with other people through communication and collaboration? And then you have the hands of leadership. You're actually hired, you got to get stuff done, right? So that's all about execution. And with that comes well, how do you get things done with systems and processes and great service? And then finally, you have the guts of leadership, which is all about accountability. And that is not only stewardship, but legacy of how am I caring for and getting results and stepping into hard conversations and taking ownership of all of this stuff. And so that's the lesson I learned through that time in my life of that skip level promotion is Leadership's not a destination, it is a body. And everything you experience, you have to go through the head, heart, hands, and guts.
I love this so much. And, I'm really present to while we can kind of name those different elements of the body, none of them work in isolation, right? At
Correct.
no point am I like, my mindset's the only thing working. A
Mhm.
100% of the time, all of these things are working together, right? Just like in leadership. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. So I would really love to talk about the guts.
Oh, okay.
I
Let's
want
just
to
get right
jump
to
right.
it. Go into
I
the deep end.
do. I do. I want to go into the guts. Share more about what are your thoughts about accountability? What does that look like in leadership?
An accountability so often, especially in the education world, is
Hmm.
let's look at our test scores.
Hmm.
How are we going to be accountable? And, what are we going to do to improve and add value to every child, right? But really, I think accountability is so much more than that. It really is about the responsibility, the ownership of every aspect, not just the numbers, not just the data. The culture is another piece, how we communicate, how we show up, how we engage as professionals. And so there's so many different aspects of that. And so, the whole book, Leadership on the Rocks, it's about giving you a backpack, a survival kit of all the things you need to pack to be successful in the wilderness of leadership. And in accountability, in the guts, I talk about it being a shelter. So often we can look at it as the storm, accountability, pointing our fingers and getting on to people, or, what, let me speak some truth. I need to tell you something, and I've got a little, I don't know if you're visual or not, but, got a
Very
little
visual.
attitude with that. And it's not, it's actually a shelter that protects where
Mm.
people can also find rest in. And so we've got to change the way we're looking at accountability. And one of the ways I do that is talking about stewardship. It's actually, and I know stewardship, either one sounds like a church word, or two, it sounds like it's just about money. And it's not, it's so much more than that. Stewardship is I've been given something and I am to care for it and to return it back in better condition than what I received it. Think about a teacher with classroom of kids. Doesn't matter where that kid comes in, and let's make it a little visual. If a kid comes in with a dime in their pocket, my job is to ensure that they leave with more than 10 cents. 11, 25, man, if they walk out with a whole dollar of knowledge and personal growth, amen to that, right? And so that is stewardship. It's how do I care for it? And that's so often what we miss the boat in I think leadership in general. Doesn't matter the industry or in our homes or parenting. We're missing accountability. And I definitely, and we'll talk about it in a little bit, but I want to tell you specifically what I learned about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to kind of separate out, I mean, accountability, I've been really digging into the research around it. There's lots of ways of looking at it, and I've been fascinated by it, right? We say it's like this one thing, but there's all these distinctions. There's formal accountability and informal accountability. I have a good friend of mine that says he calls it capital A accountability and lowercase a. And I love that, right? Like that visual of
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
of that, right? There's and I'm thinking of another distinction around self accountability and then maybe internal accountability. We could call it an external accountability,
Oh,
right?
yes.
So what, where does that live in the body, and what does that have to do with kind of caring for our own body of leadership with that?
Well, I can let me tell you just what I've learned throughout my experience. So often, let's start at the superficial level. Whenever something doesn't go as we expect, right?
Mhm.
We say, "Well, that didn't go like I thought it was going to go," or we talk about the person. Let's just be real. She should know better. I can't
Yes,
believe
the
she did that
shoulds.
or he did that. And
Uh-huh.
we start at that superficial level. And let me tell you what I found out in leadership is I've kind of lost my shock face when people make mistakes. We're human. Everybody's going to make mistakes, right? So you can't be shocked that there's going to be drama on the cheerleading squad. They're
Mhm.
15-year-olds. There's going to be
Mhm.
drama on the cheerleading squad. Let's get rid of that shocked face that people are going to make mistakes. So here's what I learned about accountability, especially what you were talking about, the internal, is instead of starting at that superficial level of accountability for them, I have to start with me. As the leader, was I clear in the expectation? And I can answer honestly, at the beginning of my leadership, I was not. People can't read my mind, and I didn't spell it out. I would say one thing and think that they heard it, understood it, could apply it, and actually implement it with fidelity. Shame on me. So it starts with me of, was I clear in the expectations? Two, did I actually train so that they can develop those skills?
Mhm.
Did I coach? Did I provide feedback after they're starting the implementation of whatever it is so that they can improve to meet the expectation or exceed the expectation? And what I found is by asking myself those three questions, so often that internal accountability was I didn't do my job.
Mhm.
I was not clear in my expectations. I didn't train you. I didn't coach you. And then after that, then we move to external. External accountability is okay, if I can honestly say yes to those three questions. I was clear in the expectations, I trained you, and I coached you. Now we have to look at the person. Do they have a lack of skill? They are not capable of doing this. And we don't get to say that in the classroom with children. You're my child, you're my student in my classroom. I'm going to accept you exactly the way that you came in there,
Mhm.
and then we will make progress, right? But whenever it comes to hiring a professional thing, I do
Mhm.
not.
Mhm.
And a lot of states are at will, right? To
Mhm.
work here, you have to be competent. And so, is it a skill issue? Is it a motivation issue? They're
Mhm.
just can't cook, won't cook. It's
Mhm.
these kids, these parents, these days.
Mhm.
Mm-mm, you can't work here. So
Mhm.
then you start stepping into different kinds of conversations. But
Mhm.
accountability internally, you got to start there. You can't be external. You
Mhm.
can't say it's all them whenever you can't honestly answer those first three questions with, did I do my job with accountability first?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And I love that. And it makes me think about even like valuing the change, right? Like when we I have this kind of framework around constructive versus destructive accountability, and it's the factors. It spells factors without the O. And I love me a good acronym, but and it talks about like how do we support people, right? Part the S in factors is support, right? So, and
Hmm.
I think you're really talking a lot about that. Like when we are holding people accountable, it's actually this beautiful thing that nourishes our people, right?
Yeah.
It's actually something if it's constructive, right? If it's not fear driven or like just purely compliance driven, if we're
Hmm.
truly supporting people, giving them feedback, right? Helping them see the value in this change, right? That
Yeah.
accountability actually becomes super important and helpful. We want this.
Absolutely. And as you were talking, it made me think about, the feedback and stuff. And Brene Brown, let's just call her America's therapist, is so much, to be clear is to be kind. And we are so culturally driven to be nice that we're
Mhm,
not kind.
mhm,
And for me, I had to find a visual in my head. What's the mark on that? And that's Mary Poppins. Firm but kind is I want the best for you. I have my intentions are true and pure, but I also live out and model whatever it is that I expect from you. And so, nothing, a pet peeve of mine hugely in leadership when it comes to accountability is that you have expectations for others that you don't live up to yourself. And you just can't do that. You have
mhm,
to set the example. You have to model all of the things that you're expecting of others. And let me give you just a perfect example that every single educator listening will be like, mm-hmm. You ever sit through professional development where you have leaders presenting and they are awful teachers?
mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
shame on you.
Mhm,
You're sitting here telling me how I need to be more engaging with my students, and yet you're not engaging me and I'm your student. Shame on you. I just
yeah.
Yeah, so accountability really, you do have to offer support, but there's also that piece of you got to walk the walk too.
Mhm. And it makes me think about self accountability. A big part of that is reflection, stopping
Hmm.
to reflect. And if we're just going, it never actually results in our own self accountability.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, all right. So we've talked kind of about the thoughts and the philosophy around this. I'd love to know what are some tips that you give folks to nourish their own body of leadership? What are concrete things folks can walk away from this episode being able to do tomorrow?
Mm. Awesome. Well, number one, I'm huge into mantras. We are so busy in our lives, and whether it's at home or at work, we are exactly what you just said, go, 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 go. The only
Mhm.
way to stop and be reflective is to have something to stop your train of thought. You have to capture that thought. And a mantra is a great way to do that. And so you can have mantras for different, aspects of your life, different, trains of thought that you tend to jump on and ride the rails of,
Mhm.
and so a mantra for this whole body of leadership is really rocks over sand is number one. How can I build my life and my leadership on what's most essential, the most essential rock, and not these sand elements, the small things that don't really matter? So rocks over sand. If I say that, then it's like, ooh, in this moment, what's a sand element and what's a rock element? And my
Mhm.
attention goes to the rock element, right? And so that's one. But for the whole body of leadership, and I do this in my workshops too. It's a callback. Teachers think I love elementary teachers with their callbacks with little kids. It's so amazing. So one of the callbacks is no matter the situation you're going through, everything runs through the body of leadership. So how do we think it, connect it, do it, and own it, right? Because it's all connected. And so that's the mantra. Whenever I am facing a situation, doesn't matter the situation, doesn't even matter whether, again, if it's at home or at work. If I'm going through something, I'm like, ooh, lots of stimuli. Pause. How am I thinking about it? How can I connect with the person in front of me? How can I do it, get something done, execute something? And then how can I own it? So think
Mhm.
it, connect it, do it, own it,
I
because it's
love
all
that, the
connected.
pause. I recently interviewed a resilience researcher, and that's what she said. The big tip is pause. And so I love that this
Mhm.
is a theme around this, the pausing, pause, pause, pause. And I know all of my coaches and leaders listening, I know all of you are doers. I know you're doers because you're doing what you do.
Yeah.
Right? And so to ask a bunch of doers, pause,
Hmm.
could feel
Yeah.
challenging. Right? What are you saying? I have so much to do. I don't have time to pause.
Yeah.
Well, we either, one of the things I've really started to say a lot is we either proactively pause. And one of the things I actually ask folks to do, the proactive element, is to find the root cause. Ooh, they rhyme, pause and cause.
Mm-hmm.
But the root cause, if we need to pause and take time to find the root cause, and that's proactive, right? Or
Absolutely.
we take the time reactively dealing with solving the wrong problem,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Or if we don't pause, we do,
Hmm.
it takes time either way.
Yes. And, whenever you're looking at how you operate your life, we operate out of beliefs. Beliefs,
Mhm.
create our thoughts and then create our feelings and our actions and all that stuff. So if you want to make a change, go back to your beliefs. What do you believe? And so often, and I'm going to speak specifically to American society, we believe that busyness equals production. If
Mhm.
I'm busy, I'm productive. And it's just not true.
Mhm.
Um, we can stay busy all day long doing 96 things and we look back, did I move the needle on anything?
Mhm.
The answer is probably not. And
Mhm.
so I love Greg McKeown in his book Essentialism. And, he talks about burnout is not a badge of honor. So
Mhm.
we have to go all the way back to what do we believe? And again, we're being nice. We're trying to do everything for everybody. And being kind is saying, I recognize what's most essential, what's most important, what's the big rock here. And that's what I'm focusing my time on. And how you get there is through exactly what you said, pausing. I got to take a hot second to stop my busyness to say what really matters here. And that's how I focus on it.
That's so powerful. And I do want to revisit the big rock analogy, right? Around, and it's interesting because I think a lot of people know it at this point, but sometimes I work with folks and they don't know. So I want to kind of take a moment. There's this analogy that,
Uh-huh.
I don't know, came out a while ago around like this idea of how do you fill a glass full of
Mm-hmm.
big rocks, gravel, and sand, right? and
Absolutely.
and you have to start with the big rocks first and then fill it with gravel and then fill it with sand, right? And then
Absolutely.
to ask yourself, what are my big rocks, because I can't have 20 big rocks,
Mm-hmm.
right?
It came from Stephen R. Covey, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. That was his big visual object lesson whenever he would talk. Keep the main thing. The main thing is one of his habits of highly successful people. But let me tell you how I came to it is whenever you are so busy with the sand elements, you say the connotation on the rocks, we say my marriage is on the rocks, my job is on the rocks, and has that negative connotation of it's struggling really bad. And so let's go with my leadership is on the rocks in a negative connotation, and it makes me want to have a drink on the rocks, right? I'm stressed
Yes.
out and now I want to go have a drink on the
Stressed
rocks.
out.
And so as I sat in there, because I felt this way, especially the first couple of years in leadership, it felt like I was in the middle of a hurricane, like this in a wilderness that I didn't know how to navigate in the middle of a hurricane, trying to herd cats
Yikes.
blindfolded. That's the way it felt. And so, and it does make you want to have a drink on the rocks. And so, where it settled is, I was thinking about that, but also just in my faith, in reading, the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus is talking about all these principles. And he's like, the wise man built his house on the rocks, the foolish man built his house on the sand. And taking these two metaphors from, Jesus and Stephen R. Covey, and I'm just like, wow. I
Mhm.
am living, yeah, I got sand all in my cracks. I am chafing in every area of my life because I have so much sand going on here, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Nobody, like, think about it. When you go to the beach, sand gets everywhere and it chafes you and it drives you crazy. And
Yes.
it's like, how do I get rid of the sand in my life? And that is, and I love puns. And so that's
Mhm.
how Leadership on the Rocks came to be. We have to focus on what's most essential and say no to those sand. Stop building those sandcastle lives, sandcastle leadership.
And it makes you think about like folks that are kind of feel dragged down by putting out fires, quote
Oh,
unquote, putting
yeah.
out fires every
Mhm.
day. And I was working with a school leader a couple years ago where his whole day was putting out fires and he was exhausted. And it takes
Mhm.
the joy. There's no school leader that's like, I love putting out fires. This is why I got into the job. No one,
Right.
right? And he was exhausted and starting to get disillusioned by the work because he's like, I go into work and it's just fire, 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 fire. And then I go
Hmm.
home and I start it all over again.
Yeah.
And we had to do the work to stop being reactive and start being proactive. And I love even
Hmm.
just, that concept, that idea of we want to pause,
Yeah.
right? Let's account for where am I being reactive? Where am I putting my attention on the sand?
Hmm.
And where can I shift my attention to what's important and
Yeah.
be proactive about that?
Absolutely. And I make the joke is sometimes you get tired of dealing with other people's shift.
Hmm.
So the only
Yes.
way to get over that is to make your own shift.
Mhm.
And it's a mind shift.
Yes.
Again, I love puns, but that's what you have to do is how do you show up? And here's the thing, another thing learned about, through this whole process. I am a high achiever people pleaser. That's kind of the
Hmm.
nature of which I stepped into leadership and how I was an individual contributor teacher, right? And as you step into that, you have to recognize that I cannot implement the perfect system in which I will never have another fire again. That's not
Hmm.
life. And
Yeah.
so mentally, I had to say, okay, fires are going to happen.
Hmm.
And so, how can I shift from being exactly what you said, reactive to proactive, so I can mitigate that fire from happening again in the future? I learned a little bit through that process. Now I know how to prevent that fire from happening again. But another
Hmm.
fire is going to pop up, and that's okay. And so, then how can I learn that? And so, you're constantly learning, but before you know it, you are going to learn how to proactively mitigate a lot of fires because you have great
Hmm.
organization.
Yeah.
Structure reduces chaos. Great communication. People feel confident and competent in what they're doing. They have
Hmm.
clarity in that. Um, and so it gives you that confidence as a leader of saying, now I know my job.
Hmm.
I know how to prevent fires, but I also know how to run to them and put them out.
Hmm.
And I think that that's a great mental asset of leaders.
Yeah. I love it. You were talking about mantras
Oh yeah.
earlier, and I would love to kind of wrap up. It's our time's kind of coming to an end, but I would love to hear like what are some mantras that you use or that you when you're working with leaders that you help others develop. I know they can be very deeply personal too.
Hmm.
And so I don't want to kind of put the spotlight on, what's deeply personal to you, but I'm just
Yeah.
curious, like
Oh
what are your
yeah.
thoughts about that?
Um, First, I am very verbose with my words. I love to talk. So honestly, the one I use most in the midst of being with people, quick to listen, slow to speak. Sit and really hear what the person in front of me is saying. Don't listen to respond. Just be present with that person. So that's the mantra that I say most. Quick to listen, slow to speak, right? And so that helps me to just be present and truly hear what they're saying and stay curious and empathetic and learn more. So that's the number one skill set that or mantra that I use. But then I already told you too that, I mean, I use this in everyday life. Whenever I have, kids, and then you've got, add in your family. I'm from a huge family, lots of stimuli, lots of chaos. I'm like rocks over sand. Whenever the chaos of little kids screaming and yelling and running around the house, and you're just like, ah, rocks over sand. I'm so thankful that we have healthy children to be able to run around. How can I structure their playtime a little differently? So, I use those two probably the most. Quick to listen,
Mhm.
slow to speak, and then rocks over sand.
Mhm. Ooh, those are so great. Thank you so much. And I hope folks listening, like, it's I to this day, it's a muscle to be quick to listen and slow to speak often,
Mhm.
right? We often got our jobs because we said the right things or we know how to say the right things. And so
Mhm.
those are really powerful. So we're gonna wrap up. But do you have one more thing that you would love to leave the listeners with moving forward?
I just kind of want to go back to the mantra from the framework of the body of leadership. It doesn't matter the situation coming at you. Um, you know, it's how you interpret the situation that can take the different paths, right? The high road, the low road, things like that. And so develop a mantra to help you quickly pause your thinking so that you can be intentional and choose the path that you're going to take, high road, low road, or indifferent. But again, the whole body of leadership is about the head of leadership. Think it, and then the heart of leadership, relationships, connect it. The hands of leadership, execution, do it. And the guts of leadership, accountability, is own it. So think it, connect it, do it, own it. And that's what I leave you with. And that will help you in every aspect of your leadership, whether at work or at home.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing this. Where can folks find out more about you, your book, and the work that you do?
Awesome. Well, my book is just released on, it's just been released on Amazon. So my website is leadershipontherocks.com. You can go there and have access to absolutely everything, including the podcast, social media links, and things like that. But I'm everywhere at leadershipontherocks.com. You can go to Amazon, look up leadershipontherocks.com, and you can have, hardcover, paperback, Kindle version, all of those. But this will be your survival guide for leadership. I promise you that because it was the survival guide I needed.
I love it so much. All right. Well, thank you for being here.
Becca, thank you so much for having me. I love your podcast, love what you're doing, and it's all connected, right? The whole educator, love it.